two exercises. So let's, I'm going to carry on. And you can continue to sit with your seat and your feet. But those two exercises are a block that I use, or a small stack that I use when I'm going from session to session. So when I'm going from, say, before coming into this meeting or before going into a new task or starting a new task, just sort of ground me. And let me show you what the science is behind that. First off, with the seat and the feet, when you bring your attention, you cannot multitask. I mean, we haven't spent a huge amount of time on that in the program, but go on and just look at the science of it. The reality is we don't multitask, we switch task. So if we think we're juggling 5 or 6 times, we're actually swapping a little bit of attention for the first one, then swapping to the second, a little bit of attention, then to the third, and then to the fourth. And it's a hopelessly inefficient process because the switching time absolutely banjaxes our attention. So when you bring your attention to your seat and your feet, when you bring your attention just to noticing those, you are absolutely in the moment. You're now present. You're now mindful. You're now here. Anytime that you're doing something and that you're thinking about what you're doing or you're aware of what you're doing, you're present. So the first reason for the seat and the feet is just to bring you present, just to get you in the moment. And I was tickled by this cartoon I found online. I mean, bottom line is your brain is happier and more effective when it's single tasking. But for our purposes, more importantly, it brings you into the now. The reason for the 6 breaths is really, really deeply scientifically grounded. And you're going to hear a lot about the science of breathing over the next few years, not even in a mindfulness context, but in other contexts. You're going to hear a lot about the power of effective breathing. But let me tell you one aspect of it. There is a large nerve that runs down runs through your spinal column. And it is absolutely critical to your ability to rest, relax, and to turn off the fight and flight response we're going to look at later in this session. So later in the session, we're going to talk about what happens when you get triggered, when you get angry, when you get upset, when you get panicked or whatever. And you can see on the right of this that it triggers something called the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight response. Dilates your pupils so you can see the threat. It inhibits salivation. So you notice when you get stressed or wound up, your mouth dries, accelerates your heart, dilates your lungs so you're breathing much faster, inhibits your digestion, all sorts of things. And down the end, perhaps the least pleasant, it relaxes the bladder. So not all in all, unless you're running from a saber-toothed tiger, not a particularly useful response. Now, when the other side of that, the off switch for that sympathetic nervous system is something called the parasympathetic nervous system. And it is triggered by, let me just get a pointer, 1 second. Can I get a pointer? Yeah, there we go. Spotlight. So let me just get that spotlight. And it's triggered by this, as I say, this vagus nerve. Well worth reading about. I'm going to send you a link so that you can do so. But when you trigger that vagus nerve, it slows down your heartbeat, stops that heavy, deep breathing, stimulates your digestion, stimulates peristalsis, or the movement of food along your alimentary canal, and contracts the bladder, which is not a bad thing either. But bottom line, it switches off that panic response. And all you need to do to trigger that is make sure that your breathing is a little bit slower and that the out breath is about the same or longer than the in breath. So as we go through this session, you're going to see that the sympathetic nervous system is about survival. It's about getting you out of dodge really, really fast when you're under threat. But if you want to thrive, if you want to be able to recover, if you want to be able to chill, if you like, you're going to need to learn to trigger the parasympathetic nervous system. And one of the fastest ways to do that is just directly through breathing. And I'll be sending you this link. Don't worry about writing it down. There's a great article here online that talks about this and talks about and goes into a little bit more depth. But just a few breaths where the in-breath and the out-breath are about the same or the out-breath's even longer has the effect of just calming you down. So those two things, they seem very simple and almost throwaway, but they're really powerful. And today's topic is about self-management, managing our emotions in difficult situations. So it's a really useful in the moment practice. When you find yourself triggered, just go back to that breathing, just to ground yourself and so on. So let me do the quick hands up thingy on the homework. Let me just get, first off, my interface is playing silly buggers here today. Let me get you guys up in front of me. Yeah. Okay, so let me just ask you, and it's just a show of hands because we don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but just tell me, how many people had the opportunity to look at this, to look at your 3 biggest challenges? You know, so give me a hands up on the thing. And this is not a test. This is just, you know, how many people had that time to look at it and see what are the biggest challenges? Oh, great. So a lot of people really engaged with this, and some of you didn't. And by the way, I noticed some of you are off checking your email. Anyway, I love technology. Yeah, so some of you got into it. What about selecting 3 practices that felt right for you? If you're going to bring this forward, if you're going to bring this outside of the program, well, then that's your next step. It's identifying what speaks to me right now. Which of these practices are absolutely right for me? And in the last session, we work on that an awful lot more, but you need to be thinking about it right now. And thank you for all the hands. I see a bunch of people have dived into that. Even planting in the back of your mind and thinking about it helps, okay? What about actually getting some of the practice at it? Show of hands, does anybody actually get to start cycling through a set of practices that, yeah, okay, great. Super. So you've started, and you know, it's in the beginning. There's so much going on with this. There's so many of these practices, and we're introducing so much over a short period of time that it can sometimes seem overwhelming. But find 1 or 2 and somewhere you can start, and you're good. And what about the David Eagleman video? Did I get you to watch that last week? I did. Did you get a chance to look at that? It's a very interesting piece. I mean, it's again, all these videos, they're just extra dimensions on things, and they give you some insight into how the work that you're doing right now actually disposes you really, really well for a very diverse world, and to be able to survive in that. We have 3 or 4 people who are with us for the first time this week. So I'm going to go really fast through this. We're in the business in this session of helping you to increase your performance and enhance your leadership, whether you're a formal leader or you're just a leader of your family and your friends and people around you, while at the same time enhancing your well-being. And we're using mindfulness as a tool set and neuroscience as the evidence for that tool set to help you develop emotional intelligence skills, because the research shows emotionally intelligent people are more successful, more settled, better well-being, and so on. And we're looking at, you've all had the opportunity to do an assessment with the Genos survey, looking at 6 core behavioral skills. And basically, the Genos survey is perfect for this. It's the only one really that fits the mindfulness world, if you like, because it looks at how do people see you show up. So we look at the extent to which you inspire performance, the extent to which people see you being self-aware, aware of your own emotions, awareness of others, or empathy, self-management, which we're looking at today, emotional reasoning, the ability to use emotional data when you're making decisions, and authenticity, being real and being genuine. And today it's very much about self-management. And self-management is utterly and completely at the core of managing your own well-being. So we're really looking at how do you deal with emotions that sometimes overwhelm us. And I think I used this story before, but there's a really old Chinese story that talks about a man on a horse charging at breakneck speed through a small village. And as he charges by, an old guy says to him, "Hey, rider, where are you going?" And the old man says, or the horseman says, "I have no idea, ask the horse." And sometimes we're like that with our emotions. We sometimes find ourselves being hijacked or sitting on the back of a fast-moving emotion. And you wonder, how did I get from A to Z? How did this happen? How did I end up reacting to this extent? And reducing some of that reactivity and giving us that space to response is what we want to do in today's session. So resilience, let's define it, because if you look at your report now and you look at self-management scale, you will see at the high end of self-management is resilience. And resilience basically is a critical skill. It's the ability, as Sharon Begley says here, to regain one's emotional balance after a setback, rather than wallowing in anxiety, anger, depression, or other negative emotions. So not a bad goal for today's session. I'm going to give you an observation test in a moment. And, oh, did I share my, no, I need to stop that so I share my sound. 1 second. Share the computer sound, share. So I'm going to give you an observation test. All I want you to do is watch this, okay, and listen to this little piece of video. And it's fairly boring. At the end of it, I'm going to ask you a couple questions. So here we go. So here we go. Okay, now apologies, but really, really quickly, while it's there, you've been doing some body scans, you've been dropping it. I want you just to drop into your body and really quickly onto the chat, just tell me, what are you noticing going on in your body? If you got a reaction to that, what are you actually noticing is the reaction that you had? You don't need to see that a second time. So anybody on the chat, just give me, let me get the chat in front of me. Yes. Okay, your heart rate increased. Anybody else? Okay, cling to the chest, tighter chest, shock, bowel movement. I'm sorry, James. Nervous giggle, heart rate increased. Yeah, super. Yeah, and that's and what you've just seen. What you've just seen is an absolutely classic stress response, if you like. Now, don't worry, I'm not gonna do it to you again. I'm going to show you another piece of video that shows you actually what went on, because it'll save me going into the next one. Don't worry, I'm not out to try and scare you again. You're not going to get another one of those. But just watch this for a moment, because it's important to what we're covering.
Fear is so important for our survival, we do something absolutely remarkable. Our bodies begin to react to a threat before we're even consciously aware of what the threat might be. Because when we're faced with danger, milliseconds count. At the first hint of danger, early warning signals are sent to the brain via the optic nerve, to our tiny and primitive fear center, the amygdala. This prepares our body for action. Next, nerve pulses are fired down the spinal cord to the adrenal glands near our kidneys. This triggers a release of adrenaline. Now we're on full alert. Adrenaline is the vital hormone that can flood our body in a split second. As it reaches our lungs, we breathe more deeply and take in more oxygen. It also makes our heart beat faster. Oxygen-rich blood is diverted to our muscles. They are now charged springs, waiting for the signal to run or fight. All this before our conscious mind has even registered a threat. This reaction to fear has evolved over millions of years and is known as the fight or flight response.
Okay, and what you didn't see in the clip, because it ended a little bit prematurely, is that he didn't actually see a snake. It was a coil of vine that was in front of him, but his body was already getting ready to deal with a snake. And it was doing, I noticed that more of you put some comments onto the chat after that came up, said heart raced, heart missed a beat, stopped breathing for a moment, reaction, chest and stomach shrunk, short of breath, sudden scare. Sue says, I had seen it before, so my anxiety rose just waiting for the scream. Yeah, so everybody pretty much had that response. And it's really critical that we understand that is let me just move it on there. An automatic response, and it's programmed into us to deal with a time when we weren't the top predator. You know, when these sort of guys strolled around the streets of Hong Kong and Johannesburg and Dublin and London, and where we needed to be off and running before our conscious brains had even kicked in. And so that primitive fear center, as they refer to it, the amygdala, basically hijacks everything and gets us running down the road or beating the bejesus out of something or somebody before we've even had a chance to think about it. Now, that was great when the world was peopled by these guys, but it's not now. And so the challenge is that this part of the brain cannot easily distinguish between existential threats, things that are going to kill us, and threats that are altogether less life-threatening. For example, this came from the tax authorities in Ireland in April 13, 2015 to me. And I was on the telephone to a colleague at the time when it came in. I shouldn't have been doing that, but I'm opening my mail talking to John. And I opened this and it said revenue audit. Now, I don't know what it's like in your country, but if they open up a revenue audit on you, you can go back 5 years. And if they find anything, they can go back another 5. And they're always determined to find something. And even somebody conservative like me, who's a coward and puts in returns that are really conservative, you get scared. So while I was talking, I noticed, because I teach this stuff, the hair standing on the back of my neck, my voice went all up high and so on and so forth. And last time you got an email from a client with a topic that sounded a little bit off, or you got a phone call from an angry client, maybe a voice message, or I have aged parents. Last time I got a call from one of my brothers, unexpected. Your heart starts to race, you start filling up with this adrenaline, etc., and it sets you off down the road. Now, it's a challenge. You get one of those, let me just stop that sound for you there for a moment. You get one of those challenges during the day, and with apologies, I've just filled you full of adrenaline and stress hormone, cortisol, and so on and so forth. You got your hair standing on end, and your heart racing quickly. But you get one of those in the day, that's tough. You get a second one, it really takes an awful lot more out of you. You get a third or a fourth one, and what happens is you start to see everything as a threat, and you get what some psychologists refer to as a revving, and not just like that it's making lots of noise, it's burning lots of fuel, but it's doing nothing useful. It's basically just wearing out the engine. And every time you get triggered like that, you're more susceptible to getting triggered next time. And over time, bottom line is, over time, your ability to resist stress becomes depleted. So if you get a period where you get triggered and you don't deal with it, and you get triggered again and you don't deal with it, you can get to a stage, and you've been there and I've been there, where you just think, oh, what can go wrong now? And everything seems like a problem. That's the challenge we want to deal with today. How do you deal with those triggers in the moment to try and stop them before you start getting to that revving amygdala, and before you get to this point where your exhaustion, your reserves are depleted? And that is a critical skill for every one of us, not just leaders, but for every one of us, because the extent to which we as leaders, particularly, or as parents, or as people who are just role models, are seen by the people around us to maintain our ability to deal with these difficult emotions and move on, is the extent to which is the way we affect them. Remember on day one, we said, the way you show up determines the way people feel. The way people feel determines how they engage with you. How they engage with you determines everything after that. Well, imagine if you're turning up to your children or your employees, and every time something goes wrong, you're like Chicken Little running around saying the sky is falling. That's the sort of response that you teach them, if you like, through your modeling. And that's the sort of impact that you have on them. It's not a positive impact. So what we want to do is deal with that. So I'm hoping most of you, actually, let me ask you for a show of hands. How many people did get a chance to look at the Susan David video that I suggested you look at beforehand? Yeah, the numbers are going up. There's something like about a third of you. If you didn't, do yourself a favor and take a chance to look at it. I just want to paraphrase some of the things she said, because I thought she put them very, very well. So looking at this guy, and you can see there are a lot of different emotional states. Which one of these guys do you want to be most of the time? So put your hand up if you prefer to be the guy in the middle all the time. Just happy clappy, and nothing ever goes wrong. Okay. Okay, so I think I think it's safe to say, yeah, anybody else? Yeah, okay, the numbers are going up. You could take those hands down now, Aoife, and tell me, who would like to be one of the other guys? You know, one of the other pictures other than the central one. Show of hands. Not so many, okay? One or two, cool. Oh, let me get rid of my attendees over here. Yeah, I mean, bottom line is, and Susan David says it perfectly, and you've heard it, and you've said it so many times, that people continue to say, I just don't want to feel this way. I just don't want to feel this emotion. I just want this feeling to go away. And she very humorously says, you know, if that's what you want, if you want those painful emotions, those difficult emotions to go away, you've got dead people's goals. And she plays it for laughs, and she is playing it for laughs, but she makes a really strong point. The cost of participating in this life is you will have days when you are the guy in the middle. You will have days when you're the other guys, when you're dealing with painful and difficult emotions. And that's just the cost of participation in this life. We have to learn to be able to deal with them, to be able to deal with those difficult thoughts, to be able to allow difficult thoughts to arise, deal with them, and not have them knock us off track. And also to be able to allow positive, joyful thoughts to arise and not to cling to them, afraid that, oh my God, I don't ever want this to end. Oh my God, this is the most wonderful experience. Please, God, don't let this go away. Because either reaction, pushing away negative thoughts or clinging excessively to positive thoughts, is a recipe for stress. But let's turn to sort of classic everyday stress. Let me ask for, again, let me get the chat line up, or the participants up there. I could ask you for a show of hands again. And please tell me, have you ever been sitting, in your house or on a bus or a car or in a session like this, and you're in perfectly good form, absolutely great form, and suddenly, I don't know, for some reason you can hardly track, your mood falls off a cliff? Give me a show of hands if that's ever happened to you. Yeah. I see the hands going up. That's a human experience, and you wonder what the hell just happened, And by the way, one of the things sometimes that happens is your blood sugar just dipped, and your blood sugar can have a tremendous impact on your mood. But something else that happens is that you can get what I choose to call runaway thoughts here. So here's what I'm talking about. There you are. You're in perfectly good form. Everything is just cool in the world. You're wearing your Genos t-shirt, available in the lobby afterwards at $9.99. I'm only kidding. You're standing there, and everything's good with the world. You're just getting on. And then some thought comes into your mind. You may not even notice the thought coming in, but the thought suddenly triggers an emotion. And the thought comes into your mind. And where do you feel that emotion? Well, in the first instance, if you choose to bring attention to it, and that's where your body scan is very useful, you're actually feeling it in your gut. You're feeling it somewhere in your body. Because remember what we said on day one. Emotions are first and foremost physiological reactions to what's going on inside and outside your world. So it imbues that in. So the thought begets an emotion. And if that continues, so the emotion appears, 10 minutes later, you're having more thoughts. So it might be, oh God, I hope I don't lose that sale. And then a few minutes later, you feel, I hope that I don't lose that sale. And you feel this feeling in your gut. And you feel your mood starting to go down a bit. You say, because if I lost that one, oh my God, what if I lost the other one? Oh Lord, what if I lost the third one? I could end up on Skid Row out in the streets. I'd be selling my children and so on and so forth. And you go from the thoughts run away, the emotion gets more dramatic. And then 1 hour later, you're just spinning on some set of thoughts. You follow that set of thoughts, and the emotion has just completely floored you. Now, again, let me ask for a show of hands. Does this sound familiar at all? Yeah, you know what? All the hands are going up. It's absolutely, it is the way we work. Be thankful for it. But we have to manage it. We have to manage it so that we recognize that these emotions are data that we can use, but not let them use us. So let's make a few points about those emotions. First, They are only physiological reactions that arise in response to internal or external stimuli. So a thought comes into your mind, you're going to have a physiological reaction. Somebody says something to you, something happens to you, you're going to have a physiological reaction. That reaction, in and of itself, is neither good nor bad. It's just a reaction. You press the button, the light goes on. So it's neither good nor bad, but more than that, it's a really valuable source of data. And sometimes you feel crap for all the right reasons. For example, sometimes feeling really, really bad, let's say when you're in a job that's just destroying you, is really good data. Maybe it's appropriate that you should feel bad because it's telling you this is not me. So our emotions are not inherently good or bad. They are just reactions, just triggers. They're a wonderful source of data, and it's the use that we make of that data that determines the impact that it has on us. And again, I'm quoting Susan David because, and thanks, by the way, to Jeff Slimmers, who turned me onto that video. I hadn't seen it, even though I've been around this stuff a lot. And she said, discomfort of that kind is the price of admission for a meaningful life. Because that discomfort is your body telling you, I don't like this. There's something wrong here. And you then need to interpret that data. So it's a valuable source of data. First off, emotions are not directives. You start to feel. This morning, for some reason, I cannot tell you, maybe just because I was up at 6:30 and I was feeling sorry for myself because I had a few days vacation recently, and I got used to getting up at 10:30 instead. And I felt a little bit, a little bit flat affect, and the mood was down a little bit. And the temptation is to follow that mood, to take it as if it's a directive. Oh, if I'm feeling down, it must be appropriate I'm down. And to start trying to figure out, why am I feeling down? What's going on? What are all of the reasons that I should be feeling down? We don't have to follow our emotions. They're not directives. Your emotions are not you. And one of the things I'm going to encourage you to do, particularly you've used the body scan already and the practice we're going to do today, is to try and get to a point where you recognize these emotions are coming and going. You have emotions in you, but they are not you. You have a choice as to the interpretation you put upon those. Now, I'm making that sound very easy. The practice is designed to make it practical. But I just want you for now, you might be saying, oh my God, it's easy to say that, Deiric, intellectually it works, but I'm not sure I can hold that frame of mind when I'm up to my ass in alligators. But just think about it right now. You have emotions in you, the physiological responses. You are not your emotions. You don't have to do what they tell you. Now, here's what we do know from the psychologists. Suppressing emotions are trying to plaster over a veneer of positivity. Don't worry, be happy. Don't worry, be happy. Don't worry, be happy. Every day and every way, I'm getting better and better. Suppressing or pushing down those emotions only amplifies them. There's an old expression, you've heard it before. It's paraphrased in many, many ways. It comes originally from Carl Jung, the great psychologist. That which we resist persists. And if you doubt me, let me use Susan David's example. Think of the night when you're sitting in a house and you've decided that this week I'm going to watch my diet and I'm not going to eat any crap or any empty calories. And you start to think about how you're not going to eat that chocolate bar that's sitting in the refrigerator. The more you think you're not going to eat it, the less you can take your mind off it. You cannot suppress thoughts. And in fact, Carl Jung said it a long time ago. He said, what you resist not only persists, but will grow in size. So pushing these thoughts away, pretending they don't exist, or distracting oneself with television. By the way, I love television, don't get me wrong, but using it as a distraction, or alcohol, or anything else just to try and push those thoughts away is not a successful strategy. We have to deal with them. So if suppression amplifies negative emotions, what we're trying to do is figure out a way of skillfully managing them. And all of the research says that one of the key things is in skillfully managing emotions is accepting. that this discomfort of negative emotions from time to time is the cost of admission to a meaningful life. Now, it's not poor me. Oh God, my life is falling apart, and I just have to accept that my life is crap. It's accepting that unpleasant and uncomfortable emotions come and go, and that's the human condition. And we deal with that a little bit more next week when we talk about self-compassion. But acceptance is the first thing. Just accepting that there are always going to be negative emotions, and accepting when you're feeling those joyful emotions and you tune into those, that you're accepting that these too will pass. Just like the negative ones will pass, the positive ones will pass too. And accepting that that's just the way of the world. Second one is to be able to say to oneself in that moment, it's okay to feel this way. Personally, for me, this is one of the most powerful phrases when you're in the grip of difficult emotions. It's okay to feel this way, because I'm feeling this way because my body is trying to communicate some data to me. And if I choose to get caught on it and spin on it, well, then I lose the meaning. So I need to, one, accept that that's normal. Secondly, tell myself it's okay to feel this way. And then bring attention to noticing, where is this emotion showing up in me? And we're going to do a practice in a moment that's going to bring this all together. Because the secret, if there's a secret, the skill in managing these difficult emotions is to acknowledge them, be with them, notice them arise, even describe them or label them, and just notice that they are not me, they're just in me. These sensations arise in you and they disappear. They are not you. And then the last one is really about getting some insight. So what's this emotion telling me? Now, if you go like our friend in the snake movie, you get ready to, bolt off down the road to get away from the snake. That's if you like, a mindless act. You're gone. You're suppressing emotion. You're getting away from it, etc. You're not getting any of the value of the data. So what we want to do is develop a practice. And we're going to do that now in the next few minutes. That will allow us to accept that thoughts come and go, that difficult emotions come and go, that it's okay that they come and go, and then to notice what they're like. So let's get into the practice that brings all of this theory together. So far we're talking theory. And if you're looking at this and you're saying, gee, Deiric, that's all great in theory, but I'm not sure I can manage this mindset. Don't worry. You know this is a practical program. We're getting into the practice that is designed to help you develop this skillful management approach. Now, some of you are starting your day, some of you are ending your day. Either way, I don't want it to start or end on a really bad note. But what I do want you to do is, just in these few seconds, bring to mind a recent incident where you were triggered negatively, where you were triggered into fear or anger or upset of some description. An emotion which you instinctively thought, I don't like this. I don't want this. I don't want to feel this way. Now, please don't pick the biggest, hairiest, ugliest trigger that you've had over the last couple of weeks that's going to leave you a mess. Pick on something that had, it was enough of a trigger and unpleasant enough that you remember it, but that you won't be uncomfortable bringing it back to mind momentarily in the practice we're going to do. So as we're setting up for that, just take a moment just to think of a time recently when somebody upset you, or you were triggered by an event into feeling fearful or sad or down or angry, or any emotion that instinctively you felt, I don't like this. I want to get away from this. Okay. So let us get into our practice. I'll explain to you why I call it stopping and dropping later on. We'll talk about that a little bit. But for now, this is a practice which really is best done eyes closed. So if it's comfortable for you to do it, get into that upright position, loose, let everything kind of go and collapse and just chill a little bit. But at the same time, upright, feet flat on the floor, palms on your thighs or in your lap. And gently close your eyes. And if it's not convenient to close your eyes in the office where you are right now, just drop your eyes down, soft focus, maybe 3-4 feet in front of you. And we're going to start off as we did this morning, once you're in that position, and just start with 6. Let's make them slow, 6 slow breaths. So just trying to make the out breath at least as long as the in breath, and maybe even a little bit longer. And if you like, you can make them mindful. You can pay attention to the breath going in and out. The main thing is to know to ensure that the out breath's a little bit longer than the in breath. Let's just do that. And as you continue with that breathing, again, let your attention just fall to your seat and your feet. Don't overly focus. Don't stress yourself. Just allow yourself become aware of the sensations that tell you your feet are on the floor and your behind is on the chair. Just sit with that for a few moments. And really just allowing yourself to come into this moment and just to be here and to settle and get ready for this practice. And so now I invite you to set an intention for the practice. And let me suggest an intention to you. The main intention of this practice is to learn how to sit with difficult emotions, to explore them, and to find a way to be with difficult emotions that are normally uncomfortable, that is more comfortable for you. So just set that intention just momentarily in your mind to explore a way of becoming more comfortable with usually uncomfortable emotions. And on your next breath, shift the attention onto the breath very gently, like a butterfly landing on your arms, a very gentle attention on the breath, just noticing it going in and out. And if you lose sensation or lose attention, the breath, just gently noticing, like being distracted, returning the attention back. And just going through that cycle of watching the breath, noticing distraction, returning it back for a minute or so. And anytime thoughts and sensations or sounds arise, just simply returning the attention back to the breath and carrying on. Breathing in and out. So now, at a faster pace than you did in the body scan, just start to scan up and down your body, just gently, just paying attention anywhere there are noticeable sensations. And when you notice any sensation, just stay with it a moment or two, gently exploring how it shows up in the body. And you might want to label those sensations simply with, for example, hot, cold, tingling, tight, loose, sharp, etc. Don't try to change them, other than maybe letting go of any tightness or tension. Just notice them. Are they hot, cold, light, tight, tingling, etc.? Just notice and allow your attention to go to any sensations. And now letting go of the attention to the body, just allow yourself to become aware of any sounds in your immediate environment, allowing your attention to go to any of them that call to you most strongly. Just noticing, but not becoming lost in them or thoughts about them. Simply noticing the sounds and letting them go. And if there are no sounds, noticing that too. And as you're doing that, you might find that some thoughts call to your attention. Again, allow yourself to notice those thoughts, explore them with curiosity, maybe label them, but don't get lost in them. Don't get caught up in them or caught up in the story. Just allowing yourself to sit there and notice any sensation that calls from your body, from your thoughts, from sounds, noticing them, letting them go. Just remaining all the time present to what's going on in your field of awareness without getting caught up in any particular stimulus. And now I invite you to recall to mind the instant we spoke about, where you've recently dealt with difficult thoughts or emotions. And I want you to take an exploratory approach to this, bringing that incident into the laboratory of your mind where we're going to investigate it a little bit. So for the next few seconds, just allow yourself to go back to that time, experiencing the incident again, as if it's being replayed with you in it in the moment. And as you do so, simply drop the beam of your attention to wherever you most noticeably experience any physical sensations that come along with the thoughts or emotions that arise. Not trying to change them, just noticing any physical sensations that are triggered by the thoughts or the emotions or come along with the thoughts and emotions. See if you're able to move up close to those feelings, tuning into them, and intentionally directing the focus of your attention to the region of the body where they're strongest. It might help to imagine that you're breathing into that part of the body on the in breath and breathing out of it on the out breath. All the time, just reliving that instant and just bringing attention to where those sensations arise in the body. And as we investigate this, we just want to explore the sensations, simply noticing how they may come and go, they may ebb and flow as you re-experience the incident. It's not about engaging with the incident, but rather bringing your attention to comings and goings of the emotions and the associated sensations. You're not trying to fix anything. You're not trying to change it. Just over the next minute or so, observing what's going on in the body with some curiosity. It is not unusual to find yourself becoming a little upset. Remind yourself that it's okay. It is normal and okay to sometimes experience emotions that are not pleasant. It's normal and it's nothing to run from. Simply devote your entire attention to the sensations, watching them as they come and go, as dispassionately as you might watch clouds moving across a clear sky, feeling no need to do other than note their presence and their nature. You may find yourself resisting the feelings, and it's normal, absolutely normal, not to want to experience them. You can reassure yourself it's okay not to want to experience unpleasant emotions, but at the same time noting they're really just simply physical sensations that will anyway come and then go. It can be useful to allow the word calm to arise in your mind on each in breath. And on each out breath, to consciously relax any tension you become aware of anywhere in the body. Even giving a label such as tension and letting it go as you say relax or softening quietly in your mind on the out breath. And your objective is just to be an observer, using each in breath and out breath to bring you closer to sitting calmly and without reaction to the sensations, just noticing them coming and going and choosing not to engage with them in mind or body. And in a longer version of this practice, if you became lost in thought or you find you've tuned out of the sensations, then you have a choice. Either you bring the difficulty back to mind again to work with it, or you allow your attention to settle back on the breath. And right now, I suggest that you bring your attention just gently back to settle on the breath for the next minute. And after that minute, when I ring the bell, just take a deep breath, open your eyes, and return your attention back to the session. And if you find any of the tension from the incident is still hanging around, make a tight fist of one of your hands, holding that tension and holding that emotion in there. And now, as I ring the bell, just gently open that hand and release that tension, and we'll carry on. Okay, so that is the practice of stopping and dropping. It's a way of learning to deal and be with difficult emotions, and a tremendously useful skill to have in the moment. I'm going to give you some more on it in the group, and a little bit more. Obviously, there's a guided version of that, goes a little bit longer. But let me tell you what's going on. Here's the core of what you've done. Previously, you saw we were talking about, just go back to our little buddy back here. We said that, you thoughts, you get into cycle with thought begets emotion, which imbues, it shows up as a sensation in your body, and that causes more thoughts, which show up as deeper sensations in your body, and they basically run away. So what you're doing in a moment here is you're stopping and dropping. When you notice that sort of thought or that sensation arising, you're bringing attention and awareness to it, and you're labeling it. And the key thing is to notice it's tight, it's loose, it's hot, it's cold, and just to be noticing, what does the sensation feel like? And really what you're doing is you're engaging the thinking mind in things. You're stopping the tyranny, if you like, the hijack of the emotional brain by bringing the thinking brain into a role of analyzing what's going on. You're breaking that cycle. So it takes a while to get into that when you feel that emotion arising, that you bring attention to it, you allow yourself to notice, what does it feel like? You learn to be with it for a few moments calmly, breathing into it, breathing out to it, and bringing awareness to it, and ideally labeling it. And that's the practice of stopping and dropping. It'll be in your handout. You notice that it starts exactly the same way as the others: 6 breaths, seat and feet, setting an intention, attention to breath. We did the short body scan, and then you got that sitting with difficult emotions. Now, I'll allow you to read this when you get the handout, but the bottom line is, this is a phenomenal tool for dealing with really challenging or stressful emotions. And I won't say any more than that, because I realize we're up against it in terms of time. I just thought it would be useful to share this. Marcus Aurelius, 167, is that after the Christian era? Anyway, yeah, after the Christian era. He said, if you're pained by something, it's not the external thing that's disturbing you, but it's the judgment you put on it, and it's in your power to wipe it out. In other words, if you engage with the thoughts and you get caught in the thoughts, well, then that's what really causes you the pain and the suffering. A man whom some of you may be old enough to remember from the 80s or 90s, Zig Ziglar, put it in English. He said, it's not what, with apologies to the Americans, it's not what happens to you in this life that matters. It's how you respond to what happens to you that makes a difference. And that's exactly what you're doing. You are pausing, bringing attention to sensations, seeing what's going on, seeing how they manifest, bringing some of the conscious or the cognitive mind into that process, so that then you can start to view this as data. And as part of some of the other practices we cover next week, then start to get some insight from that data. Here's what happens when you're caught by, let me get my pointer again, I beg your pardon, where is it? Annotate, yeah. My pointer here. So you'll see that when you get that stimulus, or that negative stimulus, stimulates the fear center in the brain and kicks off that response. All you're doing with this process is basically engaging the thinking part of the brain. So the fear stimulus comes in, it's still going to happen. Those emotions are still going to arise, but when you notice them and you start paying attention to them, you're actually engaging the thinking brain. So you're managing that response more effectively. And I'm giving you a bonus session, I'm going to record it straight after this, that talks about taming the amygdala. And it talks a little bit more about how this whole brain function, down regulation works. Okay, so with apologies for being a few minutes behind, that was a longer practice than I expected. Let me bring Aoife on for any housekeeping and to deal with the questions first off. So Aoife.
Hey Derek, thanks a million. No, and we don't actually have, so folks, if you have questions, please feel free to type them in the chat box there or in your Q&A. I will.
Gerber says, I can't help myself. I've lost attention. Every time I see this slide, I wonder what's on the end of the jetty. Me too, Gerber.
Let me see. Okay, so we've got one coming in. 7-Eleven breathing, question mark, from Patrick.
7-Eleven breathing. I don't know what that means.
Do you elaborate for us a little, Patrick, and we'll discuss.
Yeah, well, listen, I tell you what, just because I've kept you 8 or 9 minutes over, bring any questions that you have, any comments into the group. Trust me, this is a powerful personal intervention. It's really worth getting your head around. Any other housekeeping we should deal to?
I think we're great at the minute. I just want to say thank you to everyone, as you said at the start of the session. You know, when Deiric and I are working late nights on the program and getting the communications out, your emails and your thank yous and your words of appreciation and the fact that it's really helping you in your lives really energizes us. So we really appreciate that. Let's see. Oh, Wendy, I'm so sorry. She shared that she fell off her bike this weekend. I'm sorry to hear that. The session just relieved the muscle spasm behind her shoulder by relaxing.
Wow, that's fantastic. Just bringing attention. By the way, I am not an expert in this, but they do use this in pain management. I know a similar technique. So thanks for sharing that, Wendy.
Brilliant. Deiric, Sherian just shared that. I just wanted to say I did an introductory talk on EI to a group of about 50 radiologists in our regional scientific meeting and gave credit to the Genos sessions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed, Sharon. Really appreciate that. Okay. Let me move along there. As I say, apologies for running over, folks. Join the group. I don't have to say it any longer. There are 6 recorded sessions, 10 recorded practices. There will be 5 bonus recordings after we finish, and we have everything up by tomorrow. So well worth getting in there. Homework. If you want to really bring this out of the program, I mean, the program formally ends in 2 weeks. It doesn't mean we're going away, but it means this program formally ends in 2 weeks. And you want to bring those practices out of the context of the program and into the context of the program of your life. So here's what I suggest. 1, continue on establishing a routine. Figure out a time where you can get even 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes to do at least one of those practices. And ideally, maybe cycle through the ones that are best suited to where you are right now, as I said last week. But related to this one, we talked a lot about difficult emotions. Joy is a damn good thing as well. Next time you look at the one you love, or you find yourself in a situation, you say, life is good. Stop for a moment, drop into your body and notice, where am I feeling this? What does it feel like? How do I know I'm feeling joyful? Where is that? How does it show up in your body? And the same when you find yourself challenged. Just noticing the emotions and even labeling them: warm, cold, sharp, big, small, tight, loose, etc. Notice that the emotions, whether they're good or bad, they come and they go. When you're in the grip of a difficult emotion, it too shall pass. But noticing with the joy as well, enjoy it all the more. I look at my 16-month-old grandson and my whole chest just lights up. But you have to know that 5 minutes later, something challenging is going to happen. And that is the human condition, and that's okay. We just notice that's coming and going. We don't have to jump on the emotional train. We can let those thoughts go through the stations, those trains of thought, if you like, go through the station without getting on. And use the stop and drop as you need to. There's a bit of practice, but it's actually not that complex. Watch the bonus session, which I'm about to record now, called Taming Your Amygdala. It goes a little bit deeper on the taming side of things. And watch this guy, Matthew Tenney. Matthew, I'm not going to tell you, he's a freaking fascinating background. He comes from, I'm not going to tell you. I'll let you go and watch the interview when we post it. And he talks so beautifully about what it is to be present. And he talks about the first year and a half of his practice, how he did no dedicated practice. It was all just about being in the moment, as it were. So session 7, we're going to be dealing with that voice that comes into your head that tells you that you're crap, or you're inefficient, or you can't do anything right, or we all have it, referred often to the inner critic. We're going to deal with it by looking at a topic that is really hot in scientific circles right now called self-compassion. And we're going to do some preparation for the last formal session of the program. So in the meantime, please bring any of your questions, any of your comments, any articles you come across, anything that's useful to the group into the group. Because I think that's where the life is, that's where the juice is, if we can get everybody engaged with everybody else in that group. The next session is 2 weeks away. And it's 2 weeks away. One, it'll give you a chance to get some of these practices under your belt, which was the original idea. But also because myself and Aoife will be at the Genos conference. We're going to sunny Singapore, if there is such a thing. I don't know what the weather is like this time of year.